Going? All right, welcome everybody. We apologize. We're having technical difficulties tonight. Hopefully you can hear us, but we do not have any video for you, so I apologize. This is our Truth in Taxation public hearing meeting. It's August 17th. It is now 6:17 p.m., and we will begin with a Pledge of Allegiance by Councilwoman Petty and then a prayer by Councilman Soderquist.
Please stand and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Father in heaven, we thank you for the opportunity to gather together this evening. Grateful for this wonderful city that we are part of, the opportunity we have to serve and to interact with the good people here. We're grateful for the enjoyable country fair days that we were able to have earlier, for the people that put time and effort into that. I'm grateful to meet tonight and be able to discuss the taxation opportunity and information that is ahead of us. We pray that we'll be able to communicate effectively and be able to understand the way to move forward. We thank thee again for thy many blessings and pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilwoman Petty, Councilman Soderquist. All right, before we open our public hearing, we are going to turn the time over to staff to introduce the topic. So,
thank you, Mayor, Council, public present, and hopefully listening in. My opportunity here for just a couple minutes is to provide a little bit of background information on the proposal that is in front of the council and in front of the community, and why the council has considered going through the truth in taxation process as it relates to this paramedic service transfer from the county to the city and holding the rate from last year to this year. With that, you can see on the screen there, and I'm not sure if that's being shared for the broadcast, but this is happening because of a county-wide conversation that's taking place, and we are one of the cogs in the wheel, so to speak. And this is an evidence of Davis County as a whole growing and having more and more people in the community and the communities within the county. And ultimately, the service level that citizens expect and citizens have been receiving is in need of an update. And we've outgrown the old model, and this is a county-wide collaborative effort to move into this updated model and a best practice model that is also applied throughout the country. There were only 2 counties nationwide that were using the old model of service delivery, of paramedic being a joint law enforcement paramedic model of service delivery. And so what that means for the city as far as rates go is, if you look on your property tax notice, there was 1 city rate and 1 county rate. And the county paramedic rate that used to be paid to the county is being transferred to the city line. And that rate of 0.000119, again, is an amount that the citizens, all of us in Davis County, have been paying already. We have been paying that to the county. With the service change of having these cities and service districts provide paramedic service, that rate is transferring from the county line to the city line and being incorporated into the city's certified tax rate. The second portion of this is, if you look at last year's city rate on your property tax bill of 0.001403, the council has proposed to hold that same rate and then simply add the county paramedic rate. Those 2 numbers combined are what the certified tax rate that is being proposed tonight, and that is the 0.001522. So again, it's the same city rate from last year, adding the county paramedic rate into 1 rate that will now be paid to the city rather than to the county. And we are no longer moving to the next slide. The county rate based on a $410,000 home, which is the average home value in the city, that produces an amount, a tax amount based on that certified county tax rate, paramedic rate of $26.80 for the year, or $2.23 per month. That's the amount that, again, has already been paid by citizens to the county, which would transfer over to the city. The city rate of holding that rate based on $410,000 home, again, the average home value, produces $28.90 a year, in addition to what the initial proposed certified tax rate would have been had we accepted the county's new rate this year. So that's an addition of $2.41 a month. That is a total of $55.70 for the year, or about $4.64 per month, which is considered the overall increase. I think there's a little bit of a misnomer there. Again, it's not all an increase. There's a transfer, and then again, we're holding the rate. So in theory, if somebody's home value was the exact same last year as it is this year, and the city held the rate, which we are proposing to do, then they would pay the same amount of property taxes to the city. By the city holding the rate, we're capturing any value increase in the home, where typically a city does not capture that value increase. What that looks like on a percentage basis is 19.33% more property tax revenue to the city because of those two pieces. Again, holding the rate and transferring the paramedic rate. I think the main question that most people ask is, what's in it for me? What are the real benefits to this proposal? Why would the city entertain this double barrel approach, so to speak, of both of those, paramedic transfer rate and hold the rate for the city? The three main reasons among many is that we'll have qualified paramedics in the city, we'll have faster response times in an emergency, and we'll have upgraded response teams. The qualified paramedics piece of that is that the level of service that the community is able to receive will increase. By having paramedic level of EMS service, that's a higher level of service than the city is currently providing. The faster response times is that we no longer would have to wait after providing the basic life support measures and some advanced life support measures. Those larger life sustaining measures that paramedics can provide, we won't have to wait on the county for that. The response will be with city personnel. And the upgraded response teams means that we would have 3-member teams responding instead of 2-member teams responding. Some other information, just generally speaking, the city will be prepared to make this transition as far as providing the service as early as October 2021. So we are very close to being able to provide this. There's 2 components to it, a state licensing component and then a financial component. And if the proposal goes forward tonight, then we will be prepared for that October 2021. That doesn't mean it will start October 1st necessarily. There are other pieces to the puzzle, but from a staffing perspective, a finance perspective, we would be prepared and ready to go as soon as our licensing would come through, which we anticipate happening sooner than October 2021. We're still waiting from the state on that licensing piece. Another thing to keep in mind is that Davis County Sheriff's Office will continue to provide law enforcement within the city, although they would no longer be relied upon for the paramedic service. And this does not create a new taxing entity. The fire department doesn't become its own taxing entity. And there would not be a separate line item for paramedic rate within our city. It would all be incorporated into just the one city certified tax rate. Those are some questions that have kind of been circulated or have come to staff's attention, so we wanted to address that. Again, a reminder, the overall picture, oops. Yep. The overall picture is that we're just simply adding a rate that we've already paid. We are maintaining the city rate, and we will be getting a higher level of service and a faster level of service through that. I'm happy to answer any questions if they come up, and I'm grateful for the chance to give a brief overview. Thank you.
Your mic's on.
Thank you, Dave. Are there any comments or questions by council before we open public hearing? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are now open for public hearing. Please go to the podium. Keep your comments 3 minutes or less. Address the entire council and know that we won't respond during the public hearing.
And I will preface this by saying that this is written before Dave's explanation on some of this, so some of this applicable. Can you hear it? Okay, good. Paul Sturm, 2527 Deer Run Drive. These are my public comments on the Truth in Taxation public hearing. Action item 3, public hearing on proposed tax increase. The question I have is, why was a new certified tax rate not developed by Davis County for South Weber City so that the South Weber City citizens would not see a property tax increase? I think Dave answered that it had been developed, but the question is, why wasn't it accepted? The explanation / definition of a certified tax rate was provided to South Weber City citizens during the past tax increase. The purpose of a certified tax rate is so that the city does not experience a windfall in tax collection due to increased property values. If property values increase, then the certified tax rate drops so that the property taxes the city collects is revenue neutral. By maintaining the current tax rate of 0.001403, South Weber City will gain this windfall from the tax rate not being adjusted and because of increased property valuations. What does the city plan to do with this increased revenue? And I think as Dave said just during his presentation, it comes to about a 20% increase in revenue, which is fairly substantial. The flyer that South Weber City prepared and distributed for this Truth in Taxation meeting, I believe, is somewhat deceiving. The title, Truth in Taxation for Paramedic Services, addresses the fact that Davis County is discontinuing its paramedic services, and the taxes collected to pay for the Davis County paramedics will be decreased to zero, and those taxes provided to South Weber City to assume the paramedic responsibilities. It is only until one reaches the middle of the flyer that one is told that South Weber City is maintaining the current tax rate. Did South Weber City have to have this Truth in Taxation meeting to change the source of funding for paramedics services, or more specifically, to just increase tax revenue? Did one action precipitate the other? The presentation title downplays the fact that South Weber City citizens will see an overall tax increase due to increased property valuations, and that an adjusted certified tax rate was not developed or applied. And at the end of that one, Just to let you know, I saw an article in the paper today that South Weber is the has the fourth greatest population increase in Davis County. Only Farmington, North Salt Lake, and Syracuse had more than we did. We increased in population in the last 10 years by 1,816 people. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Elaine Hyde. Am I supposed to give my address?
Yes.
349 East 6650 South. So all the mumbo jumbo aside, you know, the bottom line is, are we having a tax increase or not? Is Davis County going to lower our portion by 19%? And so then 19% is now going to South Weber City. Is that what I'm understanding?
We'll try to answer that.
Because you gave the presentation and we're not supposed to, they won't answer me. So I'm just trying to understand, is it a tax increase or not? Is it?
We'll address that after public hearing, but thank you for the question, Elaine.
Okay. That's my only question.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? And do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are now out of the public hearing. And Dave, would you like to?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer those questions. Quick answer. The county paramedic amount will decrease from the county. So that portion will transfer from the county to the city. So you have paid that before, you will pay that. So that's not different. There's no increase in the county portion. Paul's questions, and I think your question is the same. Is it an increase? The city, by holding the rate, technically creates an increase. Yes. The process for that Paul highlighted is the rate that we had last year, the 0.001403, that was generated last year based on the amount of money the city received as a whole, based on the total valuation of all of the property in the city. This year, the county would look at the new total valuation of all of the property in the city, and they would adjust the tax rate to a lower amount so that the city receives the same total property tax revenue as the year before. Okay. So by definition, the city holding the rate, that is a property tax increase. When you add the amount you've already paid and the amount that is different between the county proposed, the adjusted certified tax rate for this year, and the holding the rate from last year, combined, that is a 19% increase. The net increase is about 9%. The amount that the city is holding the rate is approximately 9% different. Again, the city, by holding the rate, technically creates an increase, but that's the same rate that you paid last year.
Mayor, can I say something? I know it's not a public hearing, but can I comment? Can I ask him a question?
Sure.
So what you're saying is, we're not going to see an increase, but the city is going to receive an increase because they held the rate. Is that correct? Because it's deceiving. It's purposely deceptive. That you're saying that you're keeping the rate the same, and so that implies there's not going to be a tax increase. Yet you're saying there is going to be a tax increase. So is there going to be a tax increase to us as citizens, or if the city gets more money, which I'm not opposed to, you're going to get a bigger cut of the pie, what's wrong with that? If it's the same pie, why should the county or some other entity get it? But is that the case, or is it really and truly a deception that you're saying you're holding the same rate, but it looks like we're not having a tax increase when in reality we are?
The city in no way is trying to be deceptive. I'm sorry if it comes across like that. So I think your frustration and my frustration, we have a shared frustration. And that is the state law and the state process for generating property tax. By saying that we are holding the rate, that doesn't sound like an increase, does it?
No.
But by the process of generating a certified tax rate, by law, the city has to say we are increasing, because the formula for property taxes is the value of your home times the certified tax rate, and that's the total amount you pay. That's an individual calculation. The city, again, holding the rate, the only difference to the calculation is the value of the home. But that sounds simple, and that's not the way property taxes work. Paul hinted at it. The way property taxes work is we combine all of the value of property in the entire city and say, we received X amount of dollars last year in property taxes. For the city to receive that same amount of money in property taxes this year, based on the new home value or the total value of property in the city, the rate would therefore decrease in order to get that same amount. So the process for property taxes is every year they change the certified tax rate in order to get the same value. What the city is proposing is to maintain the same tax rate, and by extension, there is an increase in the money that the city receives.
So that's the bottom line.
That's why it's called an increase. Yes, the city is receiving more money, 19.33% more money than what the county proposed. Again, a portion of that you've already been paying to the county for the paramedics. So that's a wash. The rate that the county proposed, again, to keep the same total valuation was, I don't want to say this off the top of my head, but it was in the 0.0012 range. So again, it's a little bit confusing. We don't mean it to be confusing. We have a shared frustration with the process, because you and I think both assumed at one point in our life that the city's rate stayed the same all the time. And the only change was the valuation. But actually, both the rate and the valuation change each year. And the state tries to make it so that cities receive the same amount of property tax each year, where the city, by saying we want to hold the rate and bring in the paramedic rate, to Paul's question, all of that money will be spent on paramedics. So what does the city get? Paramedic service, all of that. That's the question you asked. So that's why it's all here. If the city were only to do the transfer of paramedic, we would still hold this hearing, because we're not accepting the rate that the county proposed that is lower than last year's rate. So by holding the rate, we would have to hold this hearing. By transferring a portion from paramedic, we would still hold this hearing. So it's one and the same. The net increase to citizens is less than $30 a year for that average home price. But the increase that state requires us to publish was the 19.33. So yes, that is, I don't want to say deceptive, but that's frustrating because it doesn't paint the exact picture of all these details.
So Delene,
did that create additional questions rather than answer them? I'm happy to answer the additional questions.
I think if we can make it really, really simple, Delene, the way I understand it is, let's say you pay $20 to Davis County for those paramedic services for a year. That $20 you're still paying, but instead of going to Davis County, it's now coming to South Weber City. And then if you think of it holding the rate or holding the dollar, so we have two choices of the city. We can hold the rate, which means that we're going to get our property tax income is going to come off of what your valuation of your home is. So whether it goes up or down, it's going to be based off of that. Or holding the dollar, which means we're going to get the same every year, regardless of what inflation does. What we chose to do is to utilize the new inflation for 2020. So how much your home went up in value from the last year when we did our tax increase to this year, we're holding the rate. So that's going to increase from what your property tax was worth last year to this year, your evaluation. And then the $20 will be coming to us instead of Davis County. Does that make a little more sense? Okay.
Yeah. You most likely will pay more if your house value went up. Yeah, and that's exactly right. So that's to answer your question. Yes, you will pay more. I'll pay more.
In fact, actually that leads into a question, a Paul's question. So he related about a 20% increase in revenue. Do you mind, Dave, clarifying where that money will be, that revenue will be geared towards?
Paramedic service.
So
it all goes to paramedic.
Can I answer that really quick? So, and I think we've answered this a couple of times. Wayne, I know has answered it. We've talked about it in Public Safety Committee many times. Roughly, the county collects $64,000. The paramedic service for South Weber City is going to cost roughly $142,000 to $147,000 for us to maintain that. If we increase by 19.3%, I didn't pull the exact number, it's roughly $140,000. It is going to cover our paramedic service barely. That's all we're doing.
Which leads to another question, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Did we hear anything more on the SAFER grant? So just for you guys, the SAFER grant was a 3-year grant that was available to us to help cover for 3 years these additional funds that will require of us. Have we heard back on that yet?
No.
Okay.
That would be financing option number 1, right? For all of this is to receive that, and it would cover us for 3 years. At the same time, at the end of 3 years, even if we receive that grant, we would still have to pay for paramedic, and this money would be used at the end of the 3 years to start paying that.
Yes.
So the
hope
answer
was,
of this will go to paramedic service. We're not
right. The hope is if we
raising-
don't get the SAFER grant, then that money will be benchmarked and kind of put in a little savings account. We can use the SAFER grant for those 3 years to pay for this increase in paramedic service. When that 3 years is up, we'll kind of have had some savings set aside specifically for this. If the SAFER grant doesn't come through, then as Blair mentioned, we barely make it. So we're going to have to, depending on where the final numbers come to, arrange the budget so that we can pay for that additional cost.
Any other comments by council? Okay. Then, if there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the meeting is adjourned.